Witches and Pros podcast. My name is Haley Camarillo, author of Fury and Flame, which will be out this October, actually. Today I have with me author Seth Overton of The Mortal Gate. Hi, thank you so much for being on today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Of course. I'm so glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about The Mortal Gate and what it is and what it's about.
Absolutely. The Mortal Gate is a GameLit novel. It's about 5 college friends that are given the opportunity to beta test a new video game, and it ends up trapping them inside. And they take the role of the fantasy characters that they have created, and they have to use these unfamiliar skills and interact with the world in order to try and escape it. GameLit itself is it's kind of a lesser known genre. It's a mix of sci-fi and fantasy, a lot like how Ready Player One works. You have augmented virtual reality, and you have real people that are taking on their avatars and having to adjust and work with this new environment in order to survive. It was released in December of 2021. It has sold almost 200 copies since then, and it does have a sequel in the works. The release on that one is up in the air currently, but it will have direct ties to the first one that was released.
That's awesome. That's very cool. So what inspired The Mortal Gate?
I'm an English language arts teacher in real life, and as far back as I can remember, I've always written stories, especially in school and in college, just writing in my notebooks, and I never had one written completely hashed out. And I decided, especially whenever COVID hit, you know what, I'm going to take this time to sit down and actually see this through. So I took those years of COVID and I just put together this book that was inspired by my fascination with video games, fantasy, and sci-fi, and even some tabletop RPGs, which are just taking over currently. And I think that this book released right in the nick of time with that as well. So yeah, that pretty much inspired it. Just filling the void of COVID and just realizing a long-term goal that I've always wanted.
That is awesome. That is very cool. I love that. And yeah, it is a great time for that sort of book to come out. So tell us a little bit about your writing journey. You said that you are an English lit major, right? That
Yes.
You were a teacher. And so
Yeah.
Have you always been a writer? Have you always been a storyteller?
Yes, I've always been a storyteller. I love telling stories. Like I said earlier, I have always written stories, just things that come into my head, just feeling like, well, what would happen if I actually hash this out? And I would just jot them down in numerous notebooks. I have a full collection of all the ones that I kept from high school and college, just sitting there waiting to be finished. And I love telling stories. I love being able to entertain, and I love making things a reality.
That's awesome. I love that. Same, always have been like that. So that's I totally understand that. Okay, so let's see. What is your writing process like? Are you more of a pantser, more of a plotter? Are your books a little bit more plot based or character based?
I'm a total pantser. I I try to plot things out, and it never, like, I feel more pressure from plotting than just putting what's in my head onto paper and then hashing it all out afterwards. So I like getting the idea of the plot down first, just what I want, and then fill in the gaps as it comes. I also really do love character-driven stories, because one of the things that has always roped me in as a reader, an avid reader, is the characters I follow. So the characters that I follow, they are the stories are very much driven by their experiences, their pros and cons, their strengths and weaknesses, and I try to develop that as much as I can in my own writing.
That's awesome. I love that. I agree. I always say I would rather read a book that has a horrible plot but amazing characters any day. So, and when you can have both, that's amazing. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, characters all the way. It's you want to have good characters. So that's
You
awesome.
want to read in the perspective of somebody that you can relate to, whether it's the main character or one of the side characters that are not hashed out enough, and then maybe one day they end up getting more added to their story.
Yes.
And I love that.
I do too. And I love, I think my favorite are villains that you can relate. Like the relatable, the sympathetic villain is just, it's a whole nother ballgame, and they're really interesting to follow.
It is. And I actually did have a review from one of my readers wanting to know more about the villain that's in my book. And I think that's inspired me to try and do a villain arc, kind of like a prologue to this. So we'll see if that goes anywhere.
That's very exciting. I am definitely a villain person. Probably probably shouldn't mention that because, but yeah, I'm always like a villain girl. So can you tell us about, is there any romance in The Mortal Gate?
Yes, there is. There are a couple of romance arcs in there. One of them follows two characters that are already with each other, and how the experience being stuck in a video game tests the boundaries of the relationship. And then another one is one that kind of, without getting too spoilery, it buds over time. It buds throughout, and there is a bit of a steamy scene closer towards the end, but it's one of those fade to black ones. So but it's one of my favorite parts about that, because the budding relationship, you can kind of see it going somewhere, but you also don't know if it's actually going to hash itself out before the book ends.
Oh, that's very cool. I love that. And I love that you have two characters that are already in love. You don't see that much. So that's really cool. I think that that's an awesome thing, having to watch two characters go through all these different trials and tribulations and see if their relationship can stand the test of time. So I like that a lot. Do you have, what were your biggest struggles with this book and writing it?
Procrastination. Not even gonna lie. I would hit writer's block as hard as any other writer would. I think that is one of our biggest weaknesses, especially for those that have yet to try and publish anything, whether it's short story or full novel. Procrastination is a heavy hitter, and it doesn't help that after the last few years, social media has blossomed with all these new little apps like TikTok. I'm not even gonna lie, I spend more time on that than anything else, and it gets in the way of my writing process.
It does.
But right, but I would also say that since writing is not my full-time job, my actual full-time job does get in the way of it. But again, it's just something that I was very proud to at least finished, with all of those obstacles in the way, with all the things that had happened over the course of those few years. I was just happy to at least get it done, even if it did take time.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. And it is hard. It's hard writing and trying to, having life get in the way. Mm-hmm. And like you said, with social media, with jobs, with life, with kids, it's amazing what writers can do, like with their passion. So artists in general, honestly, anyway. So let's see. Do you have a favorite character that you could tell us about? If you have more than one, it's okay.
Well, trying to not say that the main character is my favorite, because let's face it, every author is always going to say the one that they made the flagship, the poster child, if you will, of the entire thing is their favorite. I would have to say the best friend of my main character. His name is Riley, and without going into too much, you really see a lot of your own friends and or family in him as a character, because he starts off as a very positive and charismatic character, and then with the stress of everything that happens, you kind of see some really good twist that I hope everybody appreciates with him, showing that everybody has their breaking points.
Very interesting. Awesome. That sounds exciting. Do you have a favorite quote or a scene or anything that you can share with us?
My favorite scene, that one is actually pretty easy for me, and it was the final battle scene that I had created. I had to pull from all of my favorite movies, video games, and reading experiences to really put together this final battle.
Mhm.
And every time I read it, and just thinking about it right now, it gives me goosebumps because I did not know that I was able to put together such an iconic scene
Mhm.
that I think one of the most proud moments as a writer is giving myself goosebumps with the scenes that I write. And this one is one of the best ones.
Oh, that's so
It's just
awesome.
it's that final clash of good versus evil. And you grind your teeth through the whole thing, trying to figure out how is it going to end.
Ah, I love that. I love that tension. That's awesome. Um, this is not one of the questions that we went over, but I'm very interested and curious to know. Okay, so what is your favorite part of the writing process?
My favorite part has got to be the world building
Mhm.
because writers play God for a moment. We literally create an entire world of anything that we want. We take creative licenses from things that we have experienced, things that we think should be experienced, and we put it onto the page. And going back and forth between the real world and a virtual world, that was one of my most favorite parts because I got to uh, drastically and dramatically describe these scenarios, these landscapes, and these characters
Mhm.
that are not real, and just build them from the ground up. And no one could tell me no. It was one of the coolest things about it. And that also kind of leads into my self-publishing path, excuse me, because I independently wrote this and published it myself. And it was awesome having that freedom to world build without having somebody tell me, oh, I can't do that, because it's what I want to do. And I did it.
Yeah,
So that also feeds into it.
that's awesome. No, that is really cool. And yes, we do get to play God, and it's a very fun experience when you get to decide who lives, who dies, who falls in love, who,
Yep.
who has to do what. It's a lot of fun. So well, I had so much fun talking with you. I think that we got through all of our questions pretty quick. um yeah, it was awesome talking about your story. I cannot wait. I'm gonna pick up a copy very soon and read it. I want to. And yeah, I thank you so much for being on. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you very much for having me. And if anyone listening on the podcast wants to know where to pick this up, you guys can find it on Amazon. It is The Mortal Gate by Seth Overton. It's also on Goodreads, and it is also on Kindle. I do have a website. It's www.overtonbooks.com if anyone is interested in checking it out, because that's where I will also be posting any sort of updates about book 2 that I am currently working on.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that with me and with the watchers. Yeah. So go pick up one of his books. They sound amazing. And thank you guys so much for watching the Witches and Pros podcast. We will see you